Hello everyone, this is Dr. Sutherland. We are looking today at Adlerian theory, and we will be identifying the foundational premises attached to this theory, and then we will use Mrs. C, who is a part of our text, and walk our way through case conceptualization in terms of how Adlerian theory would conceptualize her illness. Please be sure that you have a copy of the case conceptualization analysis tree that we used in class. We will be using it and walking through it as part of this video. Key terms that you should be aware of are highlighted in blue as usual. You should be familiar with all of them through your readings. However, the ones that are highlighted in blue are of particular interest and relevance in terms of testing and general conversation as we work our way through the theory. So please reference your text again and make sure that you are familiar with all of these terms. If we look at Adlerian theory's model of personality, the primary concept is striving for superiority, and it is the core motivator of human behavior. The superiority strivings are, of course, as we've talked about, the natural reaction to inescapable feelings of inferiority that all human beings experience. Inferiorities are normal, and they are the stimuli for striving to deal with the world more effectively, and that is, in its essence, striving for superiority. Another concept within Adlerian theory involves our being finite beings. The reality in that is that we are never wise enough or powerful enough or fast enough to handle all of life's contingencies, and that is at the root of inferiorities. Inferiorities can be physical weaknesses, which the theory terms organ inferiorities, and these are physical weaknesses that predispose us to sickness or ailments such as heart ailments or kidney or bladder or lung ailments, things like that. Another form of inferiority is found in subjectively felt inferiorities, psychologically or social weaknesses that we subjectively feel and are part of what will be termed inferiority complexes. So those in a practical sense would be feelings, feeling like you're not as smart, or feeling like you're not pretty, or feeling that you're not athletic. Those are all subjectively felt feelings of inferiority. And so striving for superiority is an attempt to compensate for those very feelings of inferiority. Another concept within the model of personality involves fictional finalism. And it involves the idea, the premise that our futures are self-determined. So an example of that would be something like if a person believes that a perfect life is found in heaven as a reward for being virtuous, then that person's life will be greatly influenced by striving for that goal, whether heaven exists or not. And so we influence and we determine our futures by striving for some internally created ideal that is wrapped up in fictional finalism, and it is wrapped up in the striving for the ideal self, and that is the perfect person that we strive to become. And an additional concept or construct that we do need to be very aware of as connected with Adlerian theory and the model of personality involves social interest. And that is speaking about the idea that every individual has to come to an understanding that we are social beings and we are born to be part of interpersonal relationships. And so a healthy lifestyle reflects social interest in all human beings that contributes to the common welfare of humanity. Um, the additional part of that is that a healthy personality um, is aware that a complete life, a striving to the perfect life or achieving that, is possible only within the context of a more perfect society. And so, behind that thinking is the idea that we are all, every human being, uh, weak and um, are needed to be part of a collective, collaborative striving for transcending the human weaknesses that are present in all of humanity. And so the healthy personality is part of helping humanity move forward and transcend those weaknesses. So social interest is the compensation for all of the natural weaknesses that individual human beings have. So health cannot exist within the human being alone. Health only exists within the context of social interest. And so that is how we look at Adlerian theory's model of personality and health. So if we look at the model of pathology, we walk straight out of the idea of social interest being part of healthy personality and healthy personality development occurring within the context of social interest. So pathology then focuses on development outside of that social interest realm. And what that means is that the focus of the individual is purely on the self, with no development of social interest having occurred during childhood and being engaged in adulthood as well. As such, the striving for superiority occurs outside of the social interest realm. And as such, we have the four selfish goals of attaining superiority. And so the theory posits that when children are raised or developed outside of the social interest, then pathology will begin to develop in these four specific ways and are directly related to parental influence. So, for example, the attention-seeking personality who believes at its core that the world should take care of me will have been raised by parents who pamper and dote on those children and do things for them that they cannot do for, that they can in fact do for themselves. What comes of that then is the inferiority complex that says I am inadequate um, and cannot do for myself, and so that inferiority complex leads to an avoidance of basic life tasks such as learning to work, relating to others in an intimate way, and contributing to society in a constructive manner. Then we have our power-seeking personality, whose primary thought pattern involves I am in the fight between good and evil, and the parental influence there will be a more compulsively driven parent, a more dominating parent, nagging and scolding. And so your primary inferiority complex sounds like I am powerless. And these individuals will be afraid of ultimate failure in life tasks. And so their walking out of life will be indecisive or avoidant and will lead them to rituals that keep time from passing or moving ahead. And so you may see them repeat the same acts over and over and over again. The goal there in avoiding the passage of time is to attempt to safeguard against any further loss of self-esteem. And so the individual is able to blame compulsiveness for their lack of movement towards superiority. Then we have our revenge-taking personality, whose basic thought pattern centers on being angry at the world and everyone in it. And you will find these personalities having been raised in abusive situations. And so they will seek superiority by aggressing against society, um, and believing that society is cold and cruel, and so will be angry at the world, um, and will be hostilely aggressive towards it. And then you have your personality that is declaring of deficiency or defeat, with the primary thinking pattern: no one cares, but I'm good. I'll focus on me because that's all I can do. And you will find that coming from parental patterns of neglect, um, that yield the idea that there is no expectation that they can succeed in society, and that society doesn't really care whether they succeed or not. They will be isolative. They will deny the impact of neglect, um, and they will believe that they can be of no interest or service to other people. And so the key thing to remember here in terms of the model of pathology is that uh, pathology will generalize that all people will be like those that they have experienced in childhood. And individuals will form conclusions about themselves based on the distorted feedback that they have from just a few people, but they are in fact the primary people who have been in their lives during the formative years. So as we look then at the process of change, these are the things that we are after. The next two slides point us to what our goal is. And the goal in the process of change is going to be engagement in the process of striving for superiority, engagement in the process of reaching for the ideal self. And these are the primary things that we are looking to increase or change or identify. Um, So please be aware of all of these. Please be aware of the meaning of the style of life, and how that is involved in the therapeutic process of change. It is the representation of what you are striving to become as you move towards your ideal self. So an example of that is if you feel intellectually inadequate, then the goal is for superior intellect, and you develop a style of life that will move you in that direction. And that comes with an acceptance of uh, the reality of being finite beings. You also want to make sure that you understand um, the connection of dysfunctional patterns to family constellation, and those will be things like birth order, gender, parental influence, things like that. And all of these, in terms of therapeutic intervention, will occur within the lifestyle analysis that is part of Adlerian theory. Be sure you understand how mistaken thinking is part of what will be the focus in the process of change. Common mistakes thinking mistakes that develop in terms of uh, thoughts about the nature of the world, overgeneralizations that will be made, distortions or minimizations, things like that. Be aware of all of that, and be aware as well of what the creative self and how that is an active process that's aimed at producing a personal goal for living. And then we talked about social interest again earlier. So again, please be mindful of looking at all of that and being very familiar with it as it's discussed in your text. So as we continue to look through the process of change, and remember, as we have gone through or are going through all of the theoretical models that we study this semester, we always come back to the therapeutic process of change. We always look at, in addition to the common factors that will be part of change, we want to look at these specific factors within each theory that are addressed as part of that process of change. So for Adlerian theory, after we look at what we're after or identify what we're after through the therapeutic process of change, then we want to look at how we foster that change. What are the specific factors that we are aware of that will help us foster engagement in the process of striving for superiority, for reaching for the ideal self. And these are the three primary uh, ways, specific factors: consciousness raising, contingency control, and choosing. Please be familiar with all of these areas as well. We discussed some of these in class. If you have questions after you continue reading through the text, just make sure that you bring them with you to our next discussion and we can discuss. Lifestyle analysis is a key intervention in Adlerian theory and a key mechanism, specific factor-wise, on how to foster engagement in the process of reaching for the ideal self. And so lifestyle analysis, of course, involves family constellation, work, and interpretation. And the goal is to determine overarching patterns and in the patient's life. And delving into these types of things gives information on the sources of pathology that we discussed previously. And it helps to summarize all of these. And these factors, once they are determined and interpreted therapeutically, you'll be able to see how these factors influence lifestyle. And the purpose, of course, is feedback and education as part of consciousness raising for an individual. All right, so let's take a look at Mrs. C and see how we can conceptualize her case using Adlerian theory. Make sure that you have the case conceptualization analysis tree that we used in class. If you do not have your copy, you can download a blank one from CAMS, and then you can go ahead and work along with us as we go through this. So the first space on our tree involves adult personality, where we assess what we see in the present with Mrs. C. And remember, our four adult personality, our four selfish adult personalities that we see in striving for attainment of superiority are attention seeking, power seeking, revenge taking, and declaring of deficiency or defeat. So, if we look at Mrs. C, which one would we say? Attention seekers are, their thought process is that the world should take care of me, which doesn't really sound like Mrs. C. The second is power seeking. I am in the fight between good and evil. There's a good possibility that that is what it is. Revenge taking, I'm angry at the world and everyone in it, and so there is an aggressive nature for that person. And then declaring deficiency or defeat. No one cares about me, but I'm still okay. I'm good. I'll focus on me because that's all I can do. So if we take a look at those three and we look at Mrs. C's behaviors, the attempt to fight the pinworms, the attempt to become clean through excessive washing, compulsive washing, power seeking would probably be the adult personality that Adlerian theory would categorize, within which they would categorize Mrs. C. And so again, the evidence there is the fighting of the pinworms and the idea that she is the one that has to be powerful enough to not let the pinworms win and take over. So then we want to look at her parental influence because we want to see if we can make a connection between what we see now and what potentially her parental, her parenting, her parents' parental styles would have been. And so for the power-seeking personality, remember we are looking at compulsive parents, dominating parents, nagging parents, or scolding parents, and that is indeed what we see when we read Mrs. C's case. If you recall, the dominating father, the very compulsive mother regarding cleanliness and avoidance of sexuality, the scolding and the nagging regarding going out on dates, things like that. And so that type of parental influence would yield a child and an adult with an inferiority complex that centers around the idea of powerlessness, being afraid of ultimate failure in life tasks, and leading to just indecisiveness or avoidance, and looking to rituals to keep time for moving ahead, which we talked about before. So we can see that that is where Mrs. C's parents influenced her development. And in the present, we can see her powerlessness within the situation, um, and her fear about being incapable of caring for her 5 children and the sixth that was on the way at that time, and her inability, belief that she could not carry out or complete the life tasks that were connected with that part of her life. And so she retreated from that. And so her identified inferiorities would then be uh, subjectively felt inferiorities, psychological inferiorities. And so her self-developed neurosis is something that she can control through constant washing, which gives her power over pinworms. We would not say that she has organ inferiorities. We don't see that there are physical weaknesses that predispose her to physical ailments. So that is not a category that we would choose for her, nor would we choose masculine protest. We would be able to say, however, that Mrs. C probably does believe in herself as a finite being who is not wise enough or powerful enough to handle all of life's contingencies, but she would not be okay with that. She would feel that that is an imperfection that she alone has, and as such, she must fight it and compensate for that finiteness. And the evidence that we can see around all of that is that, of course, Mrs. C is not striving for superiority in normal life tasks. Um, she is not engaged in solving those primary life tasks. She is very self-centered in her approach. She is not involved in working for the greater good. Um, and she is failing in her relationship with her husband in terms of intimacy. And all of this provides proof for her childhood recollections of her domineering and critical parents who treated her as inferior and required, or at least treated her as though she required constant control and domination. So that is how you think about Mrs. C's neurosis, and that's how you view the evidence that we see and pull that together in terms of an Adlerian conceptualization of this particular case. Her striving for superiority comes through her neurosis at this point, rather than successful completion of life tasks. So, what are we changing if we're looking at Mrs. C and trying to continue looking at the therapeutic process of change and decide on what we're focusing on here? Remember that within the therapeutic process of change, we always want to look at these 4 areas: intrapersonal and interpersonal conflicts, individual-social conflicts, and beyond conflict to fulfillment as the content areas of what we are changing. And so for Mrs. C, um, of course we know that anxiety is most definitely something that we're looking at, and that is at the root of her inferiority. And defenses, which are compensation for the inferiorities. So those would be the intrapersonal conflicts to be addressed. In terms of interpersonal conflicts, most definitely we could say intimacy and sexuality is part of what the focus would be, as we know that she has not been sexually active with her husband, I think, in a couple of years. And so that intimacy and sexuality piece, in terms of normal life tasks, are not being carried out. Control will be another area that we definitely would believe that Mrs. C will focus on as part of her therapeutic process of change. Remember, we talked about her dominating parents and the belief system that developed for her that she was inferior rather, and needing of constant domination, which her parents did, and the belief that she can't succeed on her own in life. So her neurosis the manifestation of that belief that this inferiority makes her different from other people, which is not true in this theory. But she compensates by making herself more powerful, and she does that in a self-centered way. And so the fight against the pinworms and the control using her repetitive washing and all of those compulsions that we see are attempts to gain control over a thinking pattern in life that she is inferior. She cannot control her normal life tasks, but she can in this way through her neurosis. In terms of the individual social conflicts, adjustment versus transcendence will be a major focus for her. When we think about adjustment versus transcendence, we are talking about adjustment in terms of overcoming inferiority issues on a personal level, intrapersonal level, and at the same time committing to helping society transcend to a more perfect social system. The idea of adjustment versus transcendence is that one can't have individual adjustment at the expense of transcendence and vice versa. So it is a balance of adjustment and transcendence as opposed to one versus the other. If we think about Mrs. C, one may say that impulse control is an area of work for her in terms of the therapeutic process of change. However, within the context of Adlerian theory, we would not choose that. Impulse control becomes a problem for society only when the overall direction of that lifestyle is antisocial rather than pro-social. So although Mrs. C's lifestyle is not pro-social, it is not antisocial in the sense that we look at antisocial behavior within society as being negative or aggressive or harmful to society at large. And so that context allows us to understand that impulse control is not one of the focuses here according to Adlerian theory. And then, of course, looking at beyond conflict to fulfillment and the development of the ideal self and meaning of life, social interest is the major construct in this area. And yes, this is something that Mrs. C will definitely need to work on in terms of the therapeutic process of change, because as we've talked about, she definitely has led a self-centered life and has not engaged in interpersonal relationships with other human beings towards the betterment of society. She has not been engaged in striving together for a collective good or collective perfect society that would be part of compensating for the inferiorities that she has. And so this is definitely an area where we would want to focus with Mrs. C. Alright, so that is how we can conceptualize her through Adlerian theory. Again, if you have questions regarding the application here, please make sure that you enter them in the questions bank that you have the link for, and we will entertain those questions and talk through them the next time that we meet. All right, have a great rest of the day, everyone. Talk to you soon.